Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology. I've got a Feel Good conversation, which if you've watched any of my shows before, you'll be looking forward to this one. This is my third interview with Jeff Granville from mindfulpresence.org. He is a father of 8, an absolute cosmic, mindful person who is doing really powerful work in the field of healing, in the terms of healing trauma, helping people who need to have procedures that require lots of anesthetic and helping in the recovery of that. In particular, he's been working with parents with sick children. And so, we've learnt about his story in the very first interview I did with him, which is called A Parent's Worst Nightmare, How Mindfulness Saved a Life, and that was his son's life. And then more recently, we did another show, which I can't remember what I called it, Biohacking the Physiology of Our Divinity, which absolutely ties together the fields of consciousness, quantum physics and health. It all comes together in a beautiful package. And within that session and that interview, Jeff taught me a really powerful technique, a really simple and powerful breathing technique to literally soak my cellular level with serotonin. It's a really simple and easy technique. It's literally breathing biohacking. It's awesome. Now, today's session is kind of a follow-on. It's a logical step forwards. So Jeff has created a technique called STIR, Somatic Trauma Imprint Release, and he's going to be talking to me a little bit about how it came about and some of the things to bear in mind with it. And also he's going to lead us in the next part of the breathing biohacking. So today he's adding in an extra facet of the special breathing. And this is really part 1 of STIR, because in the next video that we do in a couple of weeks' time, Jeff is going to be showing us how to use the STIR technique to release some of our own trauma. But here's the thing, we absolutely need to be really good with the breathing first, because there are some inherent possible dangers. So if you're absolutely fascinated by this and ready for another engaging talk with Jeff, then grab a coffee, grab a cup of tea, get comfy, sit back and relax, because I absolutely guarantee this will blow your mind. It has blown my mind, and I'm recording this little intro a couple of days later. I'm still thinking about the content of what Jeff shared with me. So anyway, I really hope you like it. Let's welcome Jeff Granville back to the studio.
No matter what she relates out of her narrow focus, she will never resonate with anybody, because her spectrum is so narrow that she can't feel felt by anybody but someone who thinks in those so her potential for connecting is so narrow. And now if you look at the other end of the spectrum where we're at, we're open-minded, we come to zero, we breathe our way to our heart and our soul's desire, we shut down the chatter of human windings, and our views on spirituality and the power of creation are wide open. So we have the opportunity, as we have, to connect with people that are like-minded, like-spirited, and our spectrum is wide open. Believe it or not, that is one of the, as I've talked like in the Higher Self Expo, that your stance with spirit is the first step to having coherence to your heart, between your heart and soul. You can't have coherence between your heart and mind if you don't have coherence between your heart and soul. So your stance with spirit is the first thing you need coherence with and clarity. And I, of course, had the immediate lesson of that when my onion was peeled from McCoy's diagnosis. I wanted to be angry, but I had no time. I had to let that go and reconcile it immediately. And most people don't have that opportunity. I won't call it a luxury, because it was a very hard situation to get through. But looking back on it, it's exactly what I needed to be busted open. And when people get so rigid in their mindset, I see that in religion, and I see that in the medical system, because they're both forms of religion, right? Yeah. And it's like, we preach this, there's no other truth but our truth.
Yeah.
And that really narrows the spectrum of who she can resonate with. And that works with people in the medical profession that are going to stick by their dogma, do or die. And it's a lot of times the physicians and nurses that have illnesses themselves that would not follow their own protocol.
Yeah.
Like what the AMA, yeah, most doctors who have been broken open have suffered something that made them look at their own well-being and look outside what the AMA has to offer. And then they're cracked open. So it goes back to the book From Crisis to Creation. We will stay on our rail, in our rail car, on the rails. This is what we've been taught. This is where we're going. And we'll just stay there, and we'll be stuck regardless of where it's going. And to break that is a very powerful thing. And that's one of the things that I talk with people about immediately. Is I say, what is your literal definition of God?
Wow. What kind of answers do you get?
Amazing.
That's
It's
a good
like
question.
nobody's ever asked that question. Is it a bearded white man sitting on a cloud with all the puppet strings, answering every prayer and punishing people and sending people? I mean, is that your description? Because if it is, I'll work within those parameters.
Yeah.
If you believe in the mud puddle theory, where we just were, bacteria that grew legs and crawled out of a mud puddle with no divine intervention, I'll talk to you about that. But we have to be in alignment with spirit, with our sense of connection from our heart to our soul, and our soul to God, or whatever we call it, our sense of divinity, before we can ever be coherent between our heart and our mind. So that's where I start with a lot of people, because most of the people I deal with are dealing with some sort of crisis where their faith is now in question.
Wow. Jeff, all of that came out of us just, or me just sharing my most recent crisis, which actually, in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge crisis, but that was amazing. Because I know we're going to be talking about stir today, which I'm really excited about.
I am too. I'm so excited to share.
Yeah. I'm guessing that the conversation that you're talking about having with people is at the start point of stir. Is it in the preparation for stir? Can you lead us in with that?
Yeah, it actually starts like in the very beginning, in the very first conversation. And like I met with a young 11-year-old boy yesterday who has anxiety over shots, anxiety over needles, and having to get vaccine. And there's two types of fear. One is the fear of the needle, and the other is the fear of what's in it.
Yeah.
So if we're not afraid of what's in it, it's a lot easier to deal with the poke, right? So even talking, I didn't talk about spirit, I didn't talk about God, but I want to know how he sets with it. I have to know where the fear is coming from, because a fear of a needle is a real fear, even though we know we're going to be okay. And I dealt with this when I was 13, 6'1", and a big bushy curly hair, and I'm getting a lab draw so I can play high school football, junior high football. And it was fine until I saw the needle coming out, and it was like 1,000 spider webs being pulled out of my arm. My hearing started to ring, my ears started to ring, and my vision started to close. And they laughed at me. Great big 6-foot-tall football player passes out from a needle. And
I've also passed out from a needle as well.
And it wasn't until years later that I had to have some lab work done in an actual blood lab. And they sit you in one of those chairs that can negatively recline, so that your feet are up, because people start to pass out. So when I'm in there, I'm talking to the lab technician, and I tell her, oh, sometimes I get a little faint. So I look away. I have a way of breathing where I take away my attention. And she says, oh, you vasovague. And I said, what did you call me? And she said, no, vasovague. It's the vagal nerves being overstimulated, and it has a visceral effect on your prefrontal cortex, and it squeezes the blood back to the brainstem to respond to fear, whether it's rational or not. So the blood, all our veins have little muscles on them, just like this. And there's things that vasoconstrict and things that vasodilate, and that moves blood from one part of the body to the other. So when I'm talking to this young man about pokes, and we talk about what really seems like an irrational fear, it's in their subconscious. We know we're going to be okay. If you put a needle in my arm and some blood comes out and you put a Band-Aid on, I know in my logical mind, heart, body, everything, I'm going to be okay. But there's something deep that's triggering that fear. And oftentimes it's actually how you're sitting with spirit. It can be an alignment, like an original origin of disconnect that allows other things to fall in. Like when I work with people with somatic trauma that are having reoccurring thought processes, they get stuck in this loop, and they miss the fact of why that gap was there in the first place. And like the practice of Ho'oponopono, where their belief system, which I share, is that the essence of all our souls are peace, joy, and love, and their natural states of being.
Yeah.
Everything else is a human emotion that's temporary and has a polar opposite. So anything you experience that's not peace, joy, and love is not of you. So if somebody early in life experiences trauma and experiences, say, abuse, physical, verbal, sexual, any type of abuse, that is not in resonance with the essence of their soul, peace, joy, and love. That is outside. And it makes a wedge, it makes a divide between the connection from divinity through your soul to your heart, because that was broken. That was a disconnect. So how any incident that makes you question that is a disconnect from your soul to God, to divinity.
Yeah.
So when that gap is created by trauma, everything falls into it. When we experience trauma, it usually makes us more empathetic towards other people, because we've felt pain and we see pain in others. We share that pain. But an empath also owns the other people's pain, because the brain doesn't know the difference between a story and a real event.
Yes.
So if I love you and I care about you and I'm listening to something you're going through, I experience it biochemically, emotionally, just like you, and my brain doesn't know the difference whether it's happened to me or I'm just listening to the story. So back to my point is that any fracture allows a disconnect and allows other people's trauma and world events to go into that crevasse and separate you from the connection to divinity, which is where wellness comes from, right? And all divine inspiration and wellness comes from that direct connection from heart to soul to spirit. So our first job is to really examine logically and think. I literally have people talk to their autonomic nervous system, because it listens to all our words.
Yeah.
It's not, our autonomic nervous system is a consciousness of its own. It's shared with us. It's a shared consciousness. But like I've said before, the autonomic consciousness processes 15 million bits of information continually, not just every second, but constantly. Our conscious mind only processes 50 when we're wide awake and fully engaged, 50 bits of information. So that autonomic consciousness is constantly scanning the environment for things to be triggered about to keep you safe. So that kind of leads us in to the stir, because what we do with stir is we release those events. And I call it STIR. It's an acronym for Somatic Trauma Imprint Release, right? So there's a somatic trauma imprint for every ill we've lived through, every disconnect between our heart and our soul, every abuse, every harsh word, everything. There's a trigger in that. So what the scientists call an event-specific biological marker is created. And I give credit to the Rudins, Steve and Ronald Rudin, who invented havening, for really digging down into the science behind tapping and other self-soothing, because they've located a place in the brain where a calcium molecule is over agitated and at a frequency higher than the cell that it's in. And it creates a disconnect. It makes that, like we learned from Bruce Lipton, the nucleus is not the brain of the cell, it's the membrane. So if the membrane is agitated and vibrating at a frequency higher than it's supposed to, it can't receive new signals. So that snapshot, that emotional snapshot of the moment of trauma is like a marker inside your body, and it's activated by the brain. And our controlled breathing, our self-soothing, everything we do creates a delta frequency, like you would in sleep for rest and recovery and healing, creates that delta frequency, breaks that calcium molecule away from that vibration, that frequency, and the event-specific biological marker leaves. So the somatic trauma leaves the body. And there's all kinds of ancient modalities. Ancient cultures have used like acupuncture and chanting, mantras, breathing. There's all kinds of ways, plant medicine, that to break that frequency and release the event-specific biological marker. So with STIR, it comes back to the controlled breathing we did last time, where we use our counting of seconds to breathe and say ah and release serotonin to calm the heart. And then once the heart is entrained, it has a nice swing, speeds up when you breathe in and slows down. It's that autonomic tone, that autonomic swing that gets us in balance and at zero again. We have our resonant circuitry lined, and we have our lateral integration between our right and left hemisphere, and it's divinity. We're biohacking that physiology of divinity, where we're balanced. Okay, so when we do our breathing and we create that exhale, when we exhale, it's triggering the parasympathetic recovery of rest and digest. So when we have, and this is true for all humans, when we have heartache, pain, embarrassment, shame, guilt, all of these things draw our shoulders together, our posture.
When you're saying it, I felt like that.
These muscles get really tight, and they hold the somatic trauma. Your somatic trauma imprint release from heartache is here in your chest. So when we practice our coherence breathing enough that we can create parasympathetic on every exhale, then we start, like on the slides I showed you with the science behind it, when we breathe in for 5 heartbeats and we breathe out for 6 heartbeats, we start to clench the pelvic floor just a little bit. on 4, 5, and 6. And what that does, there's a para-aqueductal gray part in the brain that when you have that long exhale, creates serotonin discharge in the body and releases the somatic trauma. And so when we can find a spot, and I've done this with people even just over the phone, but Zoom works good, and in person I can do it for them or with them, but it is a way to self-soothe, because every symptom in the body is a red flag of something inherently out of whack inside our physiology, and usually gets back to that soul to heart connection that we lose coherence with. So anytime there's a restricted range of motion, pain when I lift my arm, which I actually have now.
I do at the moment.
Yeah.
Both arms are really heavy.
Anytime we're holding tension and holding pain in the body, it's a red flag. It's a sign, a message from the body of something wrong. So when we, of course, where our attention goes, our energy flows, right? So if I touch, like if you find your collarbone and your shoulder, where your collarbone reaches your shoulder, there's a little indent right where your collarbone, before the shoulder, you have your pec muscle here, you have your collarbone here. I'll leave it bare, and you find this spot right here. And
just above the collarbone, or just below it?
Below the collarbone.
Below. Okay.
Below the collarbone, just inside the shoulder, there's an indent before your pec. And if you start there and just kind of rub it in all directions, you can start with a circle, but you want to find anywhere between this spot and down in your pec muscle, your chest. It doesn't have to be down into your breast at all. It's just this upper pec, okay? And you'll feel like, ooh, there's kind of a spot there. There's like a
lot of soreness. It's raw.
Yeah, you might never even know it's there until you really put your attention there. Okay, so we're being gentle with this. This is not like a pressure point we're going to dig into. This is just an awareness. You're shifting your awareness to this spot. And this spot is a place where there's like a snapshot, an emotional snapshot of an event-specific event, a traumatic event from your past. It's like a Polaroid picture is pinned to this spot, and you can have multiple spots. Yeah. Well, your autonomic consciousness sends, it's monitoring this 15 million bits of information all the time. So when it says, okay, I heard a dog bark, and I heard a door slam, and my tummy's grumbling, and my hair needs to grow, and all that, it's doing all this stuff, but it's then taking a turn. Oh, there's this one, and my stomach hurts, and it goes around, and it's this one, my stomach hurts. So when anything comes up, say you have 10 event-specific markers in your body. Well, think of it like a pinball machine, and your body is the pinball machine, and there's all these little markers with the bells and whistles, right? And if you pull it back and shoot the ball, it'll go up and it'll hit off of these things. And if it hits this one, it's going to send up this, score or a light or a response. Okay. So when you experience something in your day, your autonomic consciousness, it's like a pinball going in and bouncing off all of them. And then we're stressed. Okay. So we're completely depleted, actually. All our energy goes into monitoring what's going on in our body. So doing this stir, when we create a rhythm of breath where we breathe in and we trigger the sympathetic and our heart rate speeds up, and we breathe out and it triggers the parasympathetic and our heart rate slows down. Once we can do that and really master that, then what we do is we start clenching that pelvic floor on 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. And what that does, when you touch a trigger point, like an event-specific marker, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system to respond in fight or flight because it's been triggered, right? But when you're exhaling in a parasympathetic rhythm, you're going to overlay a parasympathetic imprint over the sympathetic trigger, and it diminishes
Wow.
the charge and releases it.
That sounds like a parasympathetic plaster or a parasympathetic balm that you put on that's going to heal it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to look at it. That's a beautiful way because it's a self-soothing and call it the ointment, the nectar of God. It's like you're rubbing it on yourself, and it's
like your mum has kissed it better.
What's that?
It's like your mum has kissed it better. You know how your kids will come up and say, "Mummy, I've hurt myself," and dads do it as well. I'm sure you do as well. And you go, "Come here."
Yeah, kiss my boo-boo. Kiss my boo-boo. And let's just look at that for a minute. Okay. You acknowledge you have a boo-boo. You look to a higher source. You go to it for soothing, and a kiss makes it feel better. Okay. You're connecting to spirit. When you go to your mom or your dad, that's your connection. That's your conduit to divinity. Yes. So yeah, you are right on it. That's how it works.
Thank you for feeding that back to me, because half the time you think, why am I doing this? But it seems so important to your children to do it.
And you know that innately. You might have society watching or someone saying, oh, don't baby your kids or this and that. But ignore that. Yeah. Your heart tells you. Because your heart, yes. Your connection to your soul, your connection to your divinity knows the truth, and it knows that your child will benefit from kissing their boo-boo every time. And for them, they're holding their focus like, am I going to be okay? Is this blood going to ever stop coming out? They don't know. So they're reeling, they're labeling it with more energy than it needs. That's like, if a child falls down and you're like, hey, are you okay? They're mirroring off your response. So if they fall down when they're a toddler and you go, then that's the mirror. Their mirror neurons in their brain are going to say, that's the response for this action. Me tripping requires tears and screaming or whatever. So we mirror their response back to them from infant on. So anyway, I think you're right on.
You were saying though, so when we are doing our parasympathetic breathing, and we're focusing on this area, it puts a parasympathetic overlay. And then I interrupted you. I feel like I've stopped your flow there.
That's okay. I love to flow the direction of your thought and your heart as well. So we thank you for circling back. But yes, when we are holding somatic trauma, it is to remind us, if we ever experience that again, it's like you have a recipe of how to respond to that event. A chemical a blood chemistry tonic or toxin to respond to any event. And it's like, okay, this event required this much fear, this much running, and this much crying and whatever. So that's your emotional snapshot. So every time that is triggered, that's going to be your chemical response in your body. Your brain says, oh, it's this again. Here's the recipe. Give it to the body so we can respond. Like Candace Pert says in Molecules of Emotion, every emotion we feel is a call to action to unify the body for a response to a trigger. So if we're eating our lunch and reading a magazine and we look over and a car's coming at us, we need to respond like that. So it shoots us adrenaline and cortisol, and we're like the mom that can lift the car off the child. We're superhuman in that response, as long as we take action. But if we're triggered, like a paramedic here, or a fireman is at, playing pool at the fire hall, and the bell goes off, the fire alarm, they get adrenaline and cortisol. They're called to action. They go be superheroes, and they high five, and they finish their meal. There's no toxic blood chemistry there. They actually feel dopamine and endorphins after they're done, because they got a call to action and they took action. But anytime we're triggered for that call to action, and environmental, social, society tells us not to take action, or our own fear holds us, then that blood chemistry that was the exact blood chemistry to survive soon immediately turns toxic and into chronic stress. And then that's the marker you carry, is to turn to stress and fear and helplessness. So when we trigger that, physically trigger that, and breathe parasympathetic over it, it's like the universe works by observer, right? So when the event-specific biological marker, the snapshot, was taken and placed, it is placed there with the consciousness you were at that time. So as you evolve and you grow and you open, and then you trigger it, you're re-observing the trauma with today's consciousness. I know I'm safe. I'm doing this to myself or with someone else on purpose to release it. And then you re-observe, it's re-witnessing the event. So like in the Akashic record, and like Nassim Haramein teaches about the Akashic record and how our heart energy and emotions are laid on space-time, like an old tube phonograph, it etches it into space-time. So when we re-observe something that happened in the past, it changes it in the past and all the way forward and into our future, because we are re-examining the event from the past. We are bringing it today, into today, with our current consciousness and releasing it. Therefore, your future has to be different. If you would have carried that trauma and not reviewed it, you would make different decisions, and different reactions, and your future will be different. So by doing the somatic trauma imprint release, you are changing your past, present, and future, and no longer stuck in that automatic subconscious response from the past.
Jeff, I'm kind of speechless, which, as you know, takes quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I love that your stir technique.
Compliment.
I love that your stir technique, can render me speechless, but that it also takes you on a time travel. I love the way you've expressed that so perfectly.
Thank you.
Should we do some of it live now? I mean, not live, but would you?
Yeah.
Because I think I think people would really benefit from seeing this in action, and learning the steps that they too might want to take. I'm sure, people might want to actually contact you to be put through the process.
Yeah. And what I want to emphasize here is that if we try to do the somatic trauma imprint release before we've pretty much mastered the coherence breathing, we're going to be triggering a sympathetic response.
Okay, yeah.
But not overlaying the parasympathetic over the top. Because if I start to exhale and my heart rate starts to go down on 1, 2, 3, and then I start to put pressure 4, 5, and 6, it can turn, instead of being a parasympathetic overlay, it's just going to trigger the sympathetic and make our heartbeat speed up. So when I start doing this with people in person, I use the HeartMath hardware and software to get the biophysical feedback to verify that their heart is still going down. But when I'm working with people in person without the HeartMath, I feel their pulse as they breathe. and I can feel it speed up and slow down as they breathe. And of course, I match their breathing, because then we're entangled into an emergent property greater than the sum of our parts, right? Our hearts combine, our souls combine, our energy combine, and then we are releasing that trauma together. But when I want to emphasize that we want to be very comfortable feeling our pulse, and that our heartbeat is speeding up and slowing down, because we want it to continue to slow down even though we're triggering a sympathetic event, right? So we can work on it today as example, but I would not like anybody to watch this as their first exposure to this and start diving into pressure on their body. That's only going to trigger and reinforce, because what they're going to do is they're going to trigger the sympathetic and witness it with today's consciousness and reaffirm that trauma is still there. Okay?
Yes.
So it is extremely vital, important that we master the coherent breathing, where you feel your heart rate speed up and slow down before we start. And that's why I don't start by triggering people. I start by having them flex their pelvic floor on their own. And one amazing connection that really has not really the flow of our conversation, but it's really important with people who have had sexual abuse, or when they're trying to guard their root chakra and their sacral chakra when there's been harm. Because when we hold tension from shame, it's here. When we hold tension from unwanted sex, abuse, anything that is sexually related, we hold it down right inside our hip bones. Between our hip bone and our pelvic bone, you'll find a lump in there that holds, and it holds somatic trauma. And what it does is it gets so tight and bound that blood flow and nerve flow to the legs gets shut down. And we start to see neuropathy, leg pain, joint problems, all kinds of things from that trauma stuck. Okay, so when you are hurt in any way that refers sexual, then of course your heart's not in it. And oftentimes you can never speak your truth about what happened. So your throat chakra gets blocked, your heart chakra gets blocked. You have all this gut energy that can't be grounded through your root, and it can't go up and be expressed. So you start having gut problems and digestive problems and chemical sensitivities and things like that. So the important thing to remember is that when we have trauma and we clench our pelvic floor to protect ourselves, like if you do that right now, if you clench your pelvic floor really hard, like you're guarding yourself.
Yep.
Do you do it?
Yep.
Do you feel that tension in your jaw? If you clench your pelvic floor, you often clench your jaw.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm working with somebody right now who actually has osteoporosis in her jaw and bone spurs that can puncture her artery because of sexual trauma she had when she was a child.
Wow.
So the bone has actually deteriorated and grown spurs on it that are potentially deadly because of sexual trauma when she was a child. From every time she thought of it, or it was reminded, she would clench her pelvic floor and pinch her jaw together, and we wouldn't get good blood flow, and she had bone deterioration and problems. So your jaw is connected to your pelvic floor. Wow. So everything from that trauma is affected all the way up. And how can you have clarity, through your pineal gland? How can you have your crown chakra light up when you're not grounded and you have sacral, intestinal, heart, and throat chakra blockage, right?
Yeah.
So that's why this whole story was to get back to why, before we start triggering people's pain,
Yeah.
we want them to clench their pelvic floor gently on 4, 5, and 6 of the exhale, so that they're in control of that clench of the pelvic floor, paying specific attention to relax the jaw. That it's
Right.
just a gentle, and it's intentional. I'm creating energy and attention in my pelvic region that's not going to cause me pain and harm. It's with the intention of releasing. So then you're overlaying a parasympathetic overlay over the sympathetic trauma that happened in your pelvis. So
Wow.
it's extremely important that we follow and get the coherent breathing. And then we start with the slide of somatic trauma breathing, where we're just gently clenching that pelvic floor just a little bit. That way, if we can do that and maintain, like I can feel their pulse slow down on the exhale while they're clenching the pelvic floor, then we move on to the actual touching spots on the body. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, seeing that it's so important, Jeff, maybe we should, or maybe we could revisit the breathing exercises to do in the preparation,
Yeah.
in a full demonstration,
Yeah.
and then in our next recording, do the continuation. What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And that's really, you heard my point, is that
Yeah.
it's important to follow the steps of how to get there. Like, before we do the coherent breathing, we're going to do the controlled breathing, because we're
Yeah.
going to spray serotonin and entrain the heart. So they
Yeah.
go together in a rhythm. So I think if today we go through the breathing exercises without a whole bunch of explanation, we'll just follow them. And then we'll go to the somatic breathing, somatic trauma imprint release breathing, where we're just lightly clenching the pelvic floor on 4, 5, and 6 of the exhale. Okay. And that way it's going to set us up in that rhythm, and people can follow that without triggering something on their own.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really great idea, because the next time we're going to be meeting up is in 2 weeks, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And so that would give them enough time if they were to do it every day. I mean, how much time would you dedicate to practicing it?
Well, if you could, if somebody said I have 20 minutes a day, I would say do it for 2 minutes 10 times.
Right.
It's not going in a room and meditating for an hour and trying to fix the ills of 23 hours, right? What we're doing is we're creating a state of being, and then we maintain it through the day, like being mindful. You create this sanctuary space, and you try to go out in the world and not have it shattered, right? You try to hold that space and rhythm for yourself all day long. And that's an exercise in mindfulness, right? So I would say, and I tell all the people that I visit with, that it only takes about 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes to do the breathing exercises. So if you do those 5, 10 times a day, whatever you can do, that's great. You go all the way through them. But just like a mantra, and I tell people this is just a foundation. It's like a neural pathway, just like learning to play the piano. Neuroplasticity is like walking through a tall field of grass, and you turn around and there's a path. But if you walk it many, many times, it'll be a real clear pathway. And that's how neuroplasticity works. But we also can do the neural generation in our vagal nerve, so we have a better connection from our heart to our mind. So as we practice this many times a day, then we are creating a neurogenesis of new neurons and neuroplasticity, which is the growth of that connection. And then we can notice throughout the day, like I was saying about the mantra, like the mantra for Ho'oponopono is I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you, right? And you say it to divinity, you say it to yourself, and anytime you experience something that's not peace, joy, and love. But after you do it, after you lay the foundation and you build those connections of what that means in your body, you can take one breath and say, oh, I'm sorry. And it means the whole mantra, because you've laid that foundation, and you get the reaction in your body just with the intent of Ho'oponopono or I love you. You can get the benefit of the entire mantra. So how that applies to the breathing is that as you do this breathing, really religiously, I hate to even say the word religiously, but, consistently, you're building those connections to where a month down the road, you may carry that sanctuary space out of the house, see something that triggers you, and just take one cleansing breath, and you've got your whole body to zero just in one breath. So when I tell people start out with 5 minutes 10 times a day, you don't have to do that the rest of your life. It's something that once you build those connections in your body, you can call on them in an instant, and then you shut down that triggered response, that automatic response of great big anger or great big tears. You can just like breathe through that first tingle, and then you're at zero again.
Perfect. I can't think of a single person that I know that would not benefit and probably enjoy this.
And I want to say too that I started this from the pediatric environment. That's the download. I put my hands. It's like, humanity's crying because kids are being held down, and there's all this pain and suffering in the world. And because of the pediatric environment and this download coming from divinity to help humanity, I put my hands in that waterfall because of the pediatric. But once I opened it up and look around, we all benefit. This is an 8. This is like everybody benefits from this. So the affirmation has really been the belief that Eileen Ruhoy and Jillian had with me at the Center for Healing Neurology, that they gave me their most stuck patients. They're people with the most chronic pain, and there's nowhere to turn. We've tried every injection, we've tried everything, and they're stuck. They can't even leave the house. So I just want to give one story to really settle this in. I'm working with a young lady in California, and she has not left the house. She's 22 years old. She has chemical sensitivities. She has neuropathy. She has POTS. She has chemical sensitivity because of that she had to be on 3 antihistamines because everything would plug up. If she smelled something, like she said, a dryer sheet he'll break out in hives. She'll go in tachycardia. Her heartbeat gets so fast, she passes out. And her mom, she lives with her mom still and has to be her caregiver. And we've worked on this over the phone because Zoom is like, she can't work computers, she can't watch TV, she can't talk on the phone. So the very first time I was talking to her mom, and she grabbed the phone from her mom because of something I said, and we talked for over an hour. She'd never been on the phone for more than 10 minutes because she just starts to break down. It's just hyperactivity in her nervous system. So we worked, literally, I met her 4 months ago, and we've worked like once on the phone every 2 weeks, like 7 times at the most, okay? And there was a 3-week gap from the time I talked to her last, and she was working on these breathing exercises and the somatic trauma release on her own. And then we met the other day on the phone, and we got about 10 minutes into, hey, how are you? And she said, oh, I need to give you an update. She said, I came out of my bedroom the other day, and my mom was making dinner, and it smelled good for the first time in my life. I wasn't triggered by the smell. And she sat down and ate a full meal. It was her first full meal since she was 7. And she's been able to eat a normal, full nutritional diet Since then, she's been able to leave the house. She said, I even went into a shoe store and smelled every shoe and not one thing triggered me. She said, I'm free. She dropped all 3 of her antihistamines, half of her meds, and she's not seeing any other doctors. She said, I know it's this because I haven't changed anything else except for I'm getting off meds right and left.
Wow.
So we're talking about a 22-year-old beautiful young lady who is stuck in a house because of this, and now is able to just go shopping, pick up groceries, smell the orange, and have freedom, all because she learned about it, put her conscious intent into her breath, intentionally controlled her heart, and then learned to follow her heart. And when you have a coherent heart rhythm, you have coherent thoughts, you have coherent emotions, and you have a coherent physiology, and it all just unwinds. And this is like, I'm working with several patients right now that are not pediatric, not cancer patients. These are all just adult people that have gotten to this point so stuck that every single one of them has benefited from this and had freedom come from their life. So I just wanted to share that for the buy-in of that this actually really is doing things. No other treatment, no other pill. There is nothing more powerful than your own breath, your conscious intent of your own breath and being connected to your heart and soul. That's the basis of all health.
Wow, that is such a magnificent story. It's such a magnificent thing for you to be involved in.
Yeah, I'm honored. It brings me to tears of joy. I mean, I would have never, ever imagined that anything like this would come from the situation and help so many people.
Yeah.
And it's just such a blessing, such an honor. And I'm, such a student. I'm just love learning this.
And then, of course, it's not just her life that you're changing, because it will be her mum's life and everyone in that matrix.
Yeah.
In that constellation of the family.
Yeah. Her mom, actually, the next time we meet, her mom's going to be on Zoom, and then she'll be listening, and I'm going to go through the stir techniques with the mom so that she can help the daughter do it. Because it's like been, okay, we'll try this. And then now it's like total buy-in because of the results, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure the mum must have some trauma as well.
No doubt. How could we not?
Exactly.
How could we not?
Yeah, because I mean, I mean, I could just like. In fact, I'm gonna halt what I was gonna say, but just every time we have conversations, it links into so many different things that we've had conversations with, or little tidbits we've seen on Facebook, and it's all coming together. But that's amazing.
Yeah, and a beautiful point about that, Louisa, is that our core is our heart, and our breath work and mind can control the heart, and not control it, but be partners with it and then let it lead. That is the very center of the spider web. And it connects everything throughout. You can go any direction for addiction. You can go to self-sabotage. You can go to relationships. You can go to POTS, neuropathy. Doesn't matter. It's like when they refer somebody to me, I don't even know their diagnosis.
Yeah.
I can listen to anything they want to tell me, but I do not need details. We don't need to dig up the past to clear our future.
I love that. Hang on, can I write that down so I put it in the show notes? We don't have to. I wish I could write shorthand.
Me too.
To know the future. That is incredible.
Yeah, you just clear the now, and
Right, I'm ready to get my breath on.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm going to take this off. Oh, that was an error. Uh-oh. Okay.
All right. So what I'm going to do, since we already went through in the last show and did a verbal description and all that, I'm just going to lead the reset. We'll assume we're walking around and something triggered us, okay? And we're going to do the reset. We'll do the controlled. We'll do the coherence breathing. And then while we're doing the coherence breathing, on the last few, I'll say, okay, now clench your pelvic floor on 4, 5, and 6. And that'll be heartbeats, not seconds. So, and gentle. We're going to be gentle with ourselves. The only time we take in a lot of air in a hurry is in that first nasal inhale of the reset breathing. So we're going to take in as much air as we can for 4 seconds through the nose, and then we're going to oral exhale with the O sound, a really deep, lumbrous O sound. And that, of course, we know that releases serotonin and it gets the autonomic swing going. So then we'll do the controlled breathing and then the coherence.
Sorry, one sec. Just going to release.
Yeah.
Release my clothes a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
That made me feel better.
Okay. Right, okay.
Okay. So here we go. 4 seconds in the nose, real sharp. Go. 4, 5. Exhale. Oh. 7, 8. Okay. Gentle inhale for 5. 3, 4, 5. Gentle exhale. Ah. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. Gentle. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale. 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 3, 6. One more. Exhale. 6. Keep breathing in. Find your pulse. In. The timing will be on your own because it's your heartbeat, but we will sync. Inhale. Exhale for 6 heartbeats. Inhale. Keep going. Inhale, 5 heartbeats. Notice your heartbeat speeds up. Exhale for 6. Noticing it slows down a little more. Expand that high and low. Okay, we're going to breathe in again for 5. And now when we exhale for 6, we're going to slightly clench our pelvic floor on 4, 5, and 6. I'm following you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Relax the jaw. Slightly clench on 4, 5, and 6. Relax the entire body except for that spot. Okay, one more time. Okay. Now just release and relax and kind of keep that. Now really pay attention to this space and how it feels. Being in your body and biophysically connected to your heart and triggering the sympathetic with your pelvic floor. This is a sanctuary space. So in the future, this is one breath away. I tell people when I work with them, I am one breath away. When you feel this between us, this is the go-to sanctuary that one breath can create. This moment of space can be reached with one breath as we practice this in the future. So an observation I had on that is that when we get to the coherent breathing and we're counting our own heartbeat, I was following you and we were synced together. Your heartbeat sped up and my heartbeat slowed down because I followed you.
Wow.
So when I'm working with somebody and they're doing their coherence breathing, I breathe with them so that our heart rate and our autonomic swing entrain together. And then we're more powerful together than apart. So, and then we go from there into triggering our somatic trauma and releasing it.
Once again, I feel so marvelously chilled out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The night after we spoke last time, and I practiced the breathing. I did it when I was breastfeeding my little one, and I just kind of passed out with it. I just fell asleep. It was at the end of a long day as well. But I slept so long and hard that all of a sudden I woke up, and I was just shocked because I don't normally fall asleep before him or before anyone else. I was like, where am I? hadn't slept that deeply for a really long time.
Yeah. You know, I love so much that you did that and practiced it. And you even edited it and did a testimonial at the end of our recording. And I didn't know that at the time. You said you were going to try it. But when I watched our recording and then saw the ending where you said, when you testified that, you witnessed that, I cried. It affected me so deeply to know that I'm connected with you.
And our son.
We share a mission together.
Mm.
We're coherent together. We have the same belief system. And you took the time to learn it. You take the time to help me expose it and bring it to the world. And then you practiced it with your babies. And you had an immediate result first night. And that, what else could there be? What's better than that? What better way can I walk this earth and serve and then to hear that back? Oh, that's what it's all about.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. If you were here right now, I'd be hugging you so hard.
Oh, you're getting it. You're getting it right now. And you will. I'm going to be hugging you and Carl both.
Yes. Well, it's funny because Carl and I went to see Tanya yesterday, our good friend Tanya. Yeah, we went and hung out with her. Because she doesn't live too far away. And we were saying, oh, we need to get Jeff over.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I would love.
Maybe we all need to come. We need to have a road show and come to you, maybe.
Oh, that would be great. I would love to show you guys the Talaris project in Seattle, the wellness center we're trying to create. And we are creating, I should change my wording. We are creating. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful space. And you guys are part of it already, whether you know it or not. I'm dragging you. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing. So, I've been really touched and really moved by our connection and what I've been learning from you. And like you alluded to earlier, you know, the group that we're forming into with different people, how we're all sort of coming together and working together. It's incredible. And right now I feel very moved to release as much trauma wherever it is residing in my body, because I know it will have a knock-on effect to my children.
Yeah.
The connection, I mean, I've always known it at some level, but right now, you know what you were saying earlier, you know, when you practice that breathing, or when you work with, you know, the 11-year-old child, every action that you're doing is making a difference to the collective. You know, it touches everyone, whether we know it or not. It's out there.
Yeah.
That change, it ripples out, and it, And
Well,
if we're healing ourselves and also healing our family lines,
Yeah.
then at some level that will open as a possibility for more people to do as well.
Oh, you're so right on, Louisa. And one of the things that, of course, I follow Joe Dispenza, and one of the things that he says that I resonate and I tell everybody that I visit with is that anytime somebody experiences chronic pain or chronic illness or trauma, we all know we're a separate fractal, and we give the universe and God a perspective. It's a feedback loop where we're a separate point of view, and the universe can learn more by that. So what Dr. Joe says is anytime one of us experiences something new, we set a footprint out in the quantum unknown. So when I have somebody that's gone through trauma or pain unlike anybody else, they have stepped out into the quantum unknown and put a footprint there. Okay, so I go out there with them. I feel it. I experience it. I feel it with them, and I witness it into the reality for all humanity, because nothing happens in the universe without an observer. We are observed into being, and we observe. So if somebody goes out there alone and experiences trauma, it's hard to integrate it into humanity for everybody to follow. But if we are truly present with them and feel them and they feel felt, then we witness it, and then all of humanity can follow their footsteps. Once somebody has stepped into the quantum unknown and witnessed the path back, it can be integrated into humanity for everybody to benefit from, like the 100 monkey thing, where once a base of humanity can do it, it's available for everybody. So I agree with you on that, to the point that is the driving force behind working with even one person, because it can change it for all humanity. So I acknowledge the compliment there.
Wow. Likewise. I mean, I didn't think that my comment would reach that far out. What you just shared there about Dr. Joe and about the footprint into the future, into a new direction.
Yep.
I mean, you're right. I mean, and that, how I know that to be true is that the power of secrets. We're in this culture where we have these secrets, and it seems collectively okay for us all to have these secrets. But secrets divide us from people. They cause separation. And I know we might have our own thoughts and feelings about things. They're not really the kinds of secrets I'm talking about, but where people suffer and there's a certain amount of shame or blame or guilt or anger, they don't get shared.
Right.
And it causes more and more separation. It goes down the next family line. And of course, it goes out as well, because not everyone's related through family lines, are they?
Right.
We have these massive families, and our families aren't even necessarily our own families anymore, but we're all connected.
That's beautiful. That's so true.
Wow. Well, I'm very pleased to be on this journey with you, Jeff.
And likewise, Louisa, you are so organic and so real, and you provide a platform for me to come on and feel completely comfortable and just have, it's like I try to be with every person I work with, is I have intent, but no agenda.
Wow, that's really nice.
It's so important. And I learned this from a counselor early on when I was counseling for me and my kids, is that it's like Mushin. We have all our tools available, all the words, all the reactions, everything's available. But if we're predetermined how we're going to respond in a certain situation, we're very limited to what we have available. But if we can be at zero, if we can be Mushin, of no mind and no agenda, then we can really hear somebody and allow divinity to inspire our response, because that's going to be the best response. So to show up, I get asked, have you ever worked with somebody who had this? And I say, no. And then I immediately left brain, like, who am I to even think that I have anything to contribute? And I get kind of left brain going, nervous, this loop. And then I just show up. Just show up. You have the tools. You have the words. Don't predetermine anything. Don't have any agenda. just show up and be present, and it all happens from there.
And that takes us perfectly back to where we started, where we're having a little sort of anecdote right at the start, which
Yeah.
I'm going to edit a little bit. But it was a lovely kind of innocent conversation between two friends, where you were talking about how when you pigeonhole yourself in a belief system, or where you have everything set just like this, you're not going to have all your resources to hand. No. Because your future or your answer is already predetermined.
Yeah. You're listening to respond, not to understand.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with me today. Once again.
Love it. Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. And I absolutely really look forward to when we complete this process in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah.
It's very special. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, if I fly out there, we can do it together and we can record it.
Oh my goodness. That would be interesting. Maybe we could get together with Tanya and have a silent retreat as well. Just have people, and let's put that in. Yeah.
We need that. Yeah, that's
wow. I mean, imagine the possibilities as we're sort of facing our own silence, calmly breathing, exploring breathing patterns, and then releasing trauma. Imagine the ripples that would create.
Yeah. It creates the possibility for everybody. If we can do it, everybody can.
Yeah. Wow. This I have to let you go because I'm hoping you might come on my show with my husband tonight. Are you still on for that?
I understand. Yes. And we'll go over the timing of that, but I have space for you, and I'm honored.
Yeah. Okie dokes. Well, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for being here today, and we'll speak real soon.
So much love. Thank you so much.
So there you have it. What a simple technique, but a really powerful technique that we've learned today in order to prepare ourselves for the next step of the stir technique that Jeff is going to share with us. Please do, if you like this work, if you like the work that Jeff does, please do check out the links for him in the details below. You can reach him at mindfulpresence.org. He's very happy for you to also email him from his website. You can find him on YouTube. So connect with him, because what he has got to say and share with the world is absolutely for the benefit of everyone. I can't stress enough just what a mission Jeff Granville is on. I'm absolutely very honoured to be working with him in this way. It's a real pleasure. If you like what I'm doing, then please do feel free to subscribe to my channel too. And yes, let me know if there's any other interviews or people that you'd like to join me on this journey. Anyway, lots and lots of love to you wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.